Good evening. It is 6:34 on Tuesday, January 17th, and I'm calling to order the meeting of the Comprehensive Plan Committee. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our previous meeting, which was December 7th of 2022. And I'd be looking for a motion to approve.
I move the approval.
Okay. Any discussion regarding the minutes? I am not seeing any.
You do need
Oh,
a
and a
second.
second, sorry, second.
I'll second it.
And discussion? Seeing none. We can go ahead and vote to approve. And
I approve.
you approve, thank you, John. So that passes.
Madam Chair, could I interject something about the meeting so the participants can understand
Yes.
how
of course.
Zoom is working?
Yes.
This came up at the select board meeting. And when folks like Frank and John are Zoomed in, have been accepted into the meeting, it's as though they walked through that door and sat right here. We've got one or two mics everywhere in this room, and every conversation is picked up. So it's as though if there's someone on Zoom, it's as though they're sitting here. And I just think we need to keep that in mind. The select board wanted me to bring that up to committees.
Okay.
Thank you.
Peter?
Madam Chair, could I just ask that the minutes, I know there'll be attendance, but just reflect that we have a quorum for tonight?
Oh, yes. Mhm.
Thank you, Peter. So moving on, the first thing is our old business, which is discussing our RFP. So in your e-packet, and Sue was nice to print these out for us. So Frank and John, you should have them in your e-packet, is the one we received back. So this was received prior to the deadline. I did look through it completely, and I honestly found it pretty reassuring, because it covers a lot of the things we had questions about how are we going to get it done, or what kind of services will they provide. So help creating a video, for example, was one of the things that was listed as a service that would be provided. But I think it would be worth our discussion about whether this one that we received is enough. Do we wish to go back out, extend our deadline? Are we happy with what we have?
And could I make one correction? I didn't print these for you.
Oh.
We required
You
in the
required-
RFP that they give us printed.
Sorry, thank you.
That was a good call. Handy to have hard copy. always.
Yes.
I mean, it's here, but it's definitely here.
Yeah. But because they also gave it electronically, I didn't mail these out to you.
Good. Good.
That's why you're getting them tonight.
So any discussion on whether we're happy with what we've received?
Yeah, I read through as well and found it very comprehensive and touching on, I think, most of the points that we asked for. A lot of content here to soak up. And I would add, I have been in planning board meetings in other towns where North Star was there as a consultant for the town, and certainly was impressed with their capabilities, and mostly with their communication skills and ability to work with a board in good detail, but also in hitting the ordinance requirements, but also considering the elements that, in this case, it was a site plan review for a solar project, and I've just found them to be very good communicators of helping the boards understand how an applicant in this case might be or might not be hitting the targets in an ordinance. And So, anyways, favorable impression.
Peter?
Yeah, I'd echo John, what John said as far as the content here and their background and experience. I'd say that we don't really have anything to lose at this point by going forward with an interview. At this point, obviously, we aren't choosing North Star without an interview first. If the interview doesn't go well, then certainly I think the only thing we can do is republish the RFP and look for some more applicants. But that being said, I think that the only issue I might have would be if there was, and I don't imagine this will be an issue, if there'd be a significant delay in them appearing before either a subcommittee or the full committee for an interview.
Yeah, I also think considering that we received one, I would like to maybe just invite them to our next meeting. I don't know. I think that seems reasonable.
I think that's a good idea. My suggestion would be that it be the full committee, of course, not a subcommittee. And, I mean, Chris can speak to this in more detail, but, you know, they've done a number of area plans. They're a well-regarded firm, as John said, and a lot of experience. And I have some personal experience with them, you know, on the streetlight conversion process, and that was not when he was in this consultancy, but when he was an employee of the town of Wyndham. So I would also tell you that I think if you go back out, you're not going to get a different result because this thing went wide. The timeline is really not significant that it was, you know, around the holidays, whatever. There was some concern about that, but people who want and need work will reply. He replied. That was it. So I think this is what we got. And he's done the plans for Gray, Wyndham, Naples. So he's familiar with the region. So, but I say, yeah, have your interview, but I do the whole committee.
Yeah, I'd add a few comments. After we received his proposal, I reached out to the town of Gray, and a friend of mine was the former code officer there, and he was there when they did the comp plan, and I asked him how it went, and asked him for a little detail, and what I got back was a text from the town planner, Doug Webster from Gray, that said, basically, North Star Planning is the real deal. They had a great experience with them. They came in at budget, and the numbers that are in your proposal from them lined up with what I was told in the text. And as Don said, I worked with Ben Smith, the proprietor of North Star, when he was in Wyndham. He was a town planner there and did their comp plan, and I know his experience with that. And he also did a plan for the downtown of Wyndham to revitalize it. It was called the Century 21 Downtown Program, and basically it won awards all over the state. So, you know, I think you'd be absolutely worth interviewing, and I think, like Don said, there's not a lot of companies out there that are doing this kind of work, but from what I know, he's experienced and well-versed, and he's got a good staff. Don and I did look at his staff, and he may not be here for the majority of the project, but it sounds like he's got staff that's very capable with master's degrees and very tuned into this type of project. So,
My thought on that is I think he's putting one of the more, I guess, junior people on the staff on a principal role, but I don't think that's a bad thing because, you know, you have somebody with, you know, energy and you know, starting out in the business, and I'm not sure how much experience she has, but I think it looks like an amalgam of the whole staff. But to have somebody young and doing an initial project or one of their first projects is not bad when you have, you know, Ben and the rest of them behind the scenes. This is how we do business with our law firm. We tend to hire the more junior partners, and then they have the breadth and depth of the firm. So I'm not troubled by that at all. I think it's actually a good thing.
If we do go with them, I really appreciate their schedule matrix. It really breaks things down into easy tasks, you know, as they have them.
See, this
Makes
is,
a lot of sense.
this is the whole idea, I was saying
Yeah.
from the beginning. Once you get somebody engaged, all these questions that we've had will, well, most of these questions will disappear, I think. Sure.
Do we don't need to vote to invite him over, right? We're not actually doing anything. Okay, but we can just say
inviting
we'd
him
like to
over for
invite
an
him.
interview.
Yep.
And I would think that if there was any concerns from any of the committee here today as to whether there should be a subcommittee or task force or the full committee, I mean, it just seems to me that with one applicant, it's kind of a no-brainer
Yeah.
that everybody, and I don't really believe, given the quality of this presentation, and I've always thought that that's half the battle is the quality of the presentation, I don't think and also getting to know the committee, I don't think we're a very intimidating lot. So I don't think that would be a problem.
And it would definitely expedite the process, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, instead of dragging it out.
And I think my reason was that, you know, everybody needs to meet Ben and his North Star planning group so that they understand exactly who he is, what they do, and we have buy-in from everybody. I think if you have a small group do it, and even though there's only one, I just think it's better if everyone does it.
Agree.
So I guess we're in agreement on that.
Yeah, I believe we're all in agreement.
The only fly in the ointment I can possibly see is it's only 2 weeks to your next meeting. So if their schedule doesn't fit that,
Then we ask him to join our following
I
meeting.
would bet they'll fit the schedule.
they probably will, but that's the
I think
only
we can figure it
hiccup I
out
could see.
probably as we get
No,
there.
it's a good thought, though. It is,
Yeah.
the time has kind of compressed between meetings.
Yeah.
So, but certainly, I think we could have the meeting after next if need be.
Okay.
So is someone on the committee going to reach out to him, or would you like me to reach out to him to invite him to the next
I
meeting?
think you can do that.
Yeah, generally I would for,
Generally, you would, okay,
Yeah.
if that's the case, then
okay.
that's fine. Okay, so moving on, make sure I did this right. We are discussing the logo. So I did go back with the suggestions that I received, and I made a couple edits, such as moving the two to be together with the morrow. So I did do the outlining, sort of as you had suggested, Dawn, if I remember correctly, of the lettering, but I didn't really like how it was coming out, so I didn't even include that. I threw in a black and white, and then we also had some sketches done by Kristen. Kirsten, sorry, that is a staff member with the town of Raymond, and I personally really liked them. Of course, we would be looking to add color and, you know,
And
Raymond-
verbiage.
Yeah, some Raymond comprehensive plan around that. I was hoping, because I had reached out for time for printing, to see how much it would be for them to do those things. You know, add some color, put some verbiage on it, but I did not hear back from them yet. But I feel pretty confident that I will hear back from them, and I also think where half the work's already been done on that front, that it might be worth finding out how much that would cost us to have them do it, because I think it gives us more options. I also feel as though we're not really in a big rush for this logo, so I'd rather take our time personally and make sure that it's what we want, because it's going to stick with us for the next foreseeable future. So I'm okay with that. I don't know if anyone else feels as though we need to make a decision on that right away, considering we're still sort of getting more input for it.
So the idea would be to have time for printing, tune one of these up, too.
Yes, the
to be
two
kind of
sketches at the
print-ready.
bottom, I think they're at the bottom of the sheet there. You have the
Yep.
ones that I sort of doctored up,
Yep.
the ones that I had created.
Those are,
Which I still like. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that I don't.
Right.
I still like them. I think they're quite simple, but I also thought that the drawings were also neat too. And I think that they're a little bit more in line with the actual Raymond, if some of us can see it, the logo. You know, it's just that, I don't know, it's the same kind of vibe, where mine are a little bit different. So I'd like to see those, to see how we like them compared. And I just feel like I don't think it's much of a rush for us to wait for time for printing to get back to me. And I don't foresee it being incredibly expensive for them to take these sketches and throw some wording and coloring onto them.
Sure, I'd agree with that.
Good, good.
Yeah, so if everybody feels comfortable with that, I think we can. Frank?
Fine with me.
Fine with you and fine with you, John? Okay, great. So I think we'll just move that to the next meeting, and hopefully I'll have something to show for that.
Out of the four that you did, though, I do like the one on the top left the best. With the
Orange.
yeah.
The orange.
I just like the arrow. I know you're trying to do, like, on the bottom you have the circle and the arrow, but I think just the arrow itself.
Yep.
So out of those four, I would put my recommendation on that one if you were sending anything.
I still very much like that one too. But I like because it's clean.
Yeah.
And that's, one thing that I have towards the ones that I created. And that's, so the one you see right next to it, that's just black and gray, that would be, it's just clear. And I don't know how these drawings would fare black and white too. So I think that's something we should, keep in consideration when we're thinking about it. But I'd like to, given that we have time and that there's no rush on this, I personally would like to see what they could do for us.
Good.
All right, so we'll save that for next time we meet. And next on our agenda is survey discussion. I did go back and reviewed the surveys that I had sent out in the email back in September. And there were a couple to me that stood out a little bit more, in particular Boothbay, Gray, and Winslow. I liked their composition of the questions. I liked the number of questions. I liked that the demographic information wasn't that heavy. I think we're going to get a lot of that information anyway from our census data. I liked the questions that focus on what areas do you think need attention. I liked questions that were geared towards where would you prefer to see growth. Those were the kind of the things that I picked out of those that I liked. I do know it looks like, we would have some help sort of designing that up with the planner. But I guess those are my initial thoughts as going back over those surveys again. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I just I highlighted this as far as and alluding to what Dawn said about how much we're going to get just out of the proposals. And right in there, as you're mentioning, Kayla, the task 2.2 update project website and 2 videos. And the timeline was August through October 23. Project team will develop a series of short videos focusing on the issues the committee and the public have identified as the priority policy areas. The purpose of these videos will be to provide shareable content that will help spread the word about the comprehensive plan update and encourage greater public participation. So I think that in the interview process, that'd be something just ask them maybe to elaborate on a little bit more. I mean, is this something that is covered entirely in the purchase price of your services? Is this something where you will assist us with? Is this something that is going to be a 50-50 or that type of a question? And that will help us a little bit better in formulating our budgets going forward. Mm-hmm. I think that also it's, and it has been mentioned at previous meetings, that maybe what we do is we take this in small bites or incrementally go up to the large community survey that I agree with Kayla, a lot of this information, demographic and otherwise, is going to come through our contract planner.
Yeah.
So and also I did have a chance to ask a couple of questions of Dawn, and just to confirm what I've kind of heard in the discussions in the meeting as far as we do have resources within the town to help us with that. We've got software that can help us with a community survey. We've got videographers and the like that can assist us. We've got a licensed drone operator. We've got a lot of resources within the community. So it might be that what we do at first is start thinking about more in terms of budgetary-wise with the $10,000 we've got to play with now. We've got some money to play with now. We've mentioned everything from banners to maybe engaging with the town, and IT and videography and the like, and see the sooner the better that maybe we can get something similar to what Gray has, that kind of little stick man and what is a comprehensive plan, and get that out on the website early on. I mean, maybe even before the contract planner is telling us what he envisions or they envision for the larger surveys. So we could certainly maybe start off concentrating in those areas.
I did call Gray and ask them about that video, by the way, and they believed that their planner that they had hired had put that together for them, so the same company.
Yeah. And we've got YouTube, and we've got capabilities here, I believe, to maybe do something like that.
That's going to come into play. It's a great point to bring up now that, there's going to be surveys, there's going to be, some level of collection of data and analysis. The more of that we can do, the more we can, I guess, address the cost if you wanted to do that. I mean, I noticed that, I think it was Gray that hired GP Cog. And when you have GP Cog helping you with that, you're having somebody at an intern level. So, we have staff who can do it. We've also been investigating collaborative efforts with St. Joseph's College with students. So we may be able to get Sue's been working on that. We're feeling like we can get some students to help us. So we may be able to mitigate the costs of that piece of it. Because you're going to have the base proposal costs, which we don't know, because we asked Sue to keep that, sealed, thinking we'd have multiple consultants. But I do know that it's going to have two pieces, that plus how much can we do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think we do a lot, probably.
I would like to do a mixture, whatever the planner may have to offer us and whatever we can come up with too. And I think we can also work together in those ventures as well.
Right.
And kind of along that line for getting the word out, we now have 72 people that have said, I'd like to have more information about the comprehensive plan as we get information that have signed up online.
Did that come primarily from town meeting emails?
I'm
and
not
just,
sure if those have gotten added in.
just word of mouth, or-
You sent them to me, didn't
sent them
you?
to you.
And I sent them to Kevin, so I'm not sure if they
Yeah.
are in there or not.
Well, on that point, because Kayla used to hold this position, now it's Melissa McConkey in our office, but we could have our communications person working with, Sue, possibly Kayla, she did that when she was here, to come up with some sort of an update on a periodic basis. I'm willing to help with that as well. We can write something up and get it out so that people don't think that nothing's happening.
Yeah, that they've signed up for nothing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good idea. I think now that we're a little bit further in the process, I think it'd be a great idea to say, okay, hey, we've thrown out an RFP, we're going to be selecting a planner, sort of here's where we're at. I think
Yep,
doing that
stay
now
tuned for
would-
more to come.
Yeah,
Yes.
would be a good idea.
Sure. It wouldn't hurt also, I mean, along with that, I think that's a great idea, but also maybe through the town manager would be the best way, but as was mentioned before, keeping the select board updated.
Yeah.
Keeping maybe the planning board updated as well.
Well, I would, if I had one, I would do an update every meeting.
Yeah.
And I'll have one, right? We'll have one.
Great.
Yeah, so I think it's important to keep them engaged, but what I've gotten so far, of course, and I've talked to Peter about this and Kayla, is that this is your project, and the select board, if you like, are supportive of what you want to do, so you need to decide what you want to do and make a proposal, budgetary proposal. But as far as selection of the consultant and how you run this process, that's you.
Sure.
And they'll support you with staff in any way that they can, but they're not going to be directing it in any way.
Great. Any further discussion, or I think we can move on?
I guess it would just be as far as follow-up on putting together a video or something like that. Is that something that I think 2 weeks is a little bit of a short time to do it, but certainly on the agenda after next, if we have some sort of, maybe at the next meetings, put together, do we want to do this with a subcommittee of the committee, or how do we want to approach it so that we know what's our action plan going forward?
Okay.
Once again, Kayla did a number of videos when she was here with Bill Blood, so she's very, I think, tuned up for that, right?
Great.
Absolutely.
She was our host, if you will, or she used to, interview people, and if you've seen some of the videos that are on the website, those were done by Kayla and Bill.
I think new channels to be engaging the community different than how we've done it in the past. I mean, obviously with new technology and videos and stuff like that, would be great. But filling out forms and surveys and Survey Monkeys, that's helpful and easy. But to the extent we can just put a twist on it to get people's attention. I'm not able to offer what that twist is, but a lot of bright minds in the group, and quirky, a catchy video to try to pique people's ideas and thought about what they envision for Raymond, and somehow capturing that. I mean, the age-old favorite was with poster boards in a room. We might have 50 people, everyone putting their $100 Monopoly money where they think is the most crucial issue, much like we did with the voting day, but a little more formalized and content heavy with a bunch of information, and that's engaging. It's people in a room talking stuff through, and of the ones we've done in the past, I think that was a good one. Maybe there's a new version of that would.
In what, and I'm sorry if I missed that, in what scenario did you do that?
That was, we did it for the open space plan to try to get people's input on where they would spend their $200.
Right, and where did you hold it? Like, what was the time?
And we were up in the gym, I think, or in the school, and it was as part of the open space plan process, and I guess it was the cafeteria, actually, and we had a facilitator for that. Who was our planner? Don, remember?
Rich Rothy?
After Rich, it was for the open space plan.
Oh, Hugh.
Hugh, yeah, Hugh. So that was helpful, and in this case, we have Ben or one of his people on board, perhaps to help out. But it was just one of several methods for getting input that was creative and engaging, rather than folks just filling out forms on their computers at home.
It's boring.
Right.
Outside of elections, do we really have any other town gatherings?
No.
As a general? No.
Not any longer. We used to have town meeting,
Right.
but now the town meeting has gone to being voted by ballot for the foreseeable future.
Peter?
Yeah, but to Kayla's point, I think we had this conversation in as far as what does it look like as far as the whole presentation of the plan to the community. I think it was suggested at one point, I think I said it, at one of the meetings, and maybe it was more out of frustration than anything else, that, maybe we convened this committee too soon. Because, we were so far away from actually getting a contract planner, in the sense was amongst some of us that we really could not do anything without a contract planner. And yet the reverse of that is, going to your point, Kayla, we have the luxury of a little time here. And I think, we need to celebrate. We've already accomplished a lot. I mean, you might not think discussing a logo is a big deal, but in fact, it's all PR. And my understanding is that a lot of this, as far as selling it to the community, is PR. I mean, like any good campaign. It's how the presentation, I mean, this is a very professional and good presentation. It was the first thing that impressed me about it before I even cracked it and started reading it. It was just, well, this is well organized and it's a presentation. And this is as much a marketing tool as anything else. So whether we're getting into, getting the video on the website that basically people can just click on, or using some of the information we already have that we've collected as far as where the attitude of the townsfolk are with some of those general questions. And I agree with John, though, when we start really drilling down to more of these surveys, when we listed like the 4 or 5 broad categories that people at town election listed. I mean, one of the top 3 was economy. Well, okay, but what are we talking about? Are we talking about businesses?
Right.
Do we want to stimulate business? Is it taxes that we're talking about?
So your personal economy and your house
Absolutely.
prices. Yeah.
Absolutely. We didn't design that to drill down that far. We were just trying to get a general sense, but in putting these survey questions together, that's what we're going to be doing, drilling down more into a definition.
So I just had a thought on opportunities to put ourselves out there, and occasionally Raymond Rec and Joe joins forces with the parent-teacher organization, and they hold little events, like a winter event last year we did with ice skating. So we can't do that yet, but that will occur at some point. Maybe there's a way for us to kind of slide in a little bit and have some sort of fun, engaging activity with Monopoly money, or something of the like.
If you had an outdoor event, we still have our 2004 banner that has the same logo on it.
That's right.
You could hang that up somewhere. It's in good shape. Looks as good as it did then.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think there probably are opportunities for us to sort of get out there again in the same way that we did with the election, just in a different way, to sort of continue that engagement.
Sure. With the understanding that whoever our planner, contract planner is going to be, they're going to be coming in and seeing, well, they've already done a little bit of the footwork here, but the bottom line is they're going to elaborate a lot more and provide us with a lot more ideas and guidance as well.
Yeah, they'll bring their own ideas to the table. Maybe what I can do, I haven't seen anything about an event coming up, but there'll be one at some point.
Yeah.
There was a winter one last year.
We have to get snow first.
Yeah.
All right.
Or ice, yeah, right.
Has to be winter first.
But those things happen. They did a Halloween one, so that there was a Halloween. I'm trying to think if there was any others, but I think there'll be opportunities where maybe it's not necessarily more of the whole town getting together, but it is definitely a certain subsection of people that do gather at certain times. And that would also help engage our youth.
Absolutely. I think at the last meeting, Brad brought up the issue about engaging the schools.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea as well. But like I say, the plan is probably good to already have a list of those things, but if they don't, we've already thought of that. Can you elaborate? What's your
We
experience?
could, speaking of the school, and I agree that's a good suggestion by Brad, why don't we put together some kind of a, I guess, lesson plan or a, I guess, a request for the students at the schools to maybe give us their feedback as to what they think is important in Raymond.
Absolutely.
And for the future, and we were talking about the future, there's your future, and to make it some kind of a unit, I think, we could contact them and see if that would be something they'd be interested in.
I could email and ask whether, sort of give them a little bit of what we're doing, and does that fit into any of their current curriculum, or a piece of what they're currently teaching that they could kind of slide this in as well, create an activity out of it.
I think they'll say yes, based on, I don't think you were here, but back, several years ago, we used to go up there a lot. A number of us would go up there and talk to them about local government and so forth. So I think they'll say yes.
Okay, I'm putting it on my to-do list.
Just kind of curious, do we have somebody who edits video in the town, or like the videos that you did? We do have somebody.
Bill Blood did video editing. Yep.
Okay.
So if we did the video, he could edit it for us, put it together.
He's actually a professional videographer. He does a lot of work in that area. And so it turned out, as I said, Kayla was probably the best person on our staff, and to be she would interview people, and they would produce these videos that I thought were very well done on a number of topics. But we now have Melissa too, she's not done that yet, but I'm sure she'll be good at it.
Let's,
All right.
let's ask North Star their thoughts on engaging the schools when we talk to them in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, if they've had any experience with that and how they
How
did it,
to
if they
do
did.
that efficiently and
Yeah.
kind of with some focus.
And John brings up a good point that escaped me, but in our conversation about North Star, and this would go out to all of the committee, as well as the individuals from the municipal side. We should have a set of questions if we're going to do an interview. So I don't know that we need to have a subcommittee for that, but I would just ask everyone, let's say if we're interviewing them in 2 weeks, between now and then, to think of 1 or 2 questions and you probably could draw it right from this presentation, questions that you might want to pose to them, not necessarily all about what's this going to cost us, but more or less what would your approach be and what's your philosophy, although they do a pretty good job of spelling out what their philosophy is. But I just ask everybody in the committee to have a couple of questions.
Yep, that's good.
Okay, I don't mind sending that email out after the meeting since we don't have a few of our attendees here. Just requesting that, would like to invite them to our next meeting. Please submit, 1 or 2 questions geared towards process and content.
Sure.
All right, any further discussion on that? Not seeing any. So the next item is new business, and that is the addition of new members. Jackie had asked and inquired about the process of adding any new committee members. She has somebody that she knows that's interested. And then I was also approached kind of shortly after that by another member of our community asking, hey, is it too late to join the committee? So Peter and I asked Dawn about that. It is, I guess the answer to that is it's up to us, whether we would like to see new members as our committee or members of our committee. I guess for me, I think that considering the length that we'll be spending time with each other, that things do arise, we don't know what each person's sort of future holds in time, that having more members would be beneficial to us, just in case we lose a few along the way.
I agree with that to a point. And you have to decide that point, because you get the group too large, it can be an issue, but as you just pointed out, too small is also an issue, and you want just right. And I think if anything, we're probably a little too small right now.
Yeah, so
With the full group?
Yeah. I think what I'm saying is, I think if you had within reason, a few more people who wanted to participate, that wouldn't be a bad thing. And when I say that, I'm thinking, 2, 3, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, right now we have 2. Frank, I see you. Just hold on 1 second. Right now we have 2 who have expressed interest. I feel like we're still sort of early on. I feel like, unless there's more people jumping, at the bit here to do this, I mean, the next month or so, I would say after an addition of 2 more, that would probably be good, unless we find that some are leaving, at a rate faster and we can't keep our quorum. So Frank, sorry.
What I think we should do is keep it open until we've hired our consultant. And once we've hired the consultant, that would be the end of adding new members, which is going to give us another month and a half or more. And you've got a couple already that are interested, so I just set some kind of a deadline. Because you want to keep adding people a year and a half from now.
Yeah, there should be a cutoff.
No,
Agreed.
it would be too far in the process. Yeah, so I mean, I was thinking since we're still sort of early on, that I'm open to it, I guess is what I should say.
I'm open.
So how do you want to go about that? They would need to be appointed by the Board of Selectmen. So,
Logistically, what would happen is the board would vote to recommend them to the select board.
right, I was going to get to that. So in order to recommend them, I guess you could either, take it on good faith, as we did with all of you, and, or you could have them come in and meet you and talk.
Be okay with just a,
I mean, you all just put your names into,
Well, they all did fill out an application.
I know, but they would do that, but there wouldn't be a formal recommendation from the committee.
Right,
Or-
so just to clarify, the process would be they'd fill out the volunteer form, because that's
Same thing you
obviously
did.
step one. Step two, we would vote as a committee to have them join, right? So, no, am I jumping the gun?
I think,
Then we would go to the
I think
select board.
step one is probably you're going to be open to adding new members. Step two is, Frank's idea, you have a limit on time, and then you may want to have a limit on how many new members. And then you'd have them go through the process that Sue just outlined of the application like you did, and then to the selectmen for appointment. That's how I see
Okay,
it.
okay.
So if I understand, what we just skip is a step that we skipped, which was to basically have the applicants come before the board so that then we would interview them and then recommend them to the select board. But being that we didn't go through that process, it seems a little onerous to ask someone else to do it.
But you can do whatever you want.
Sure.
If you want to do that, you could do that.
I would think to expedite it, I'd be all for, as Dawn outlined, basically that we just, and I like Frank's idea that we, certainly by the time the consultant comes on, unless there was, if we get an outpouring all of a sudden of 10 more people, which we aren't going to have, that want to come on board between now and whatever, we'd consider any applications up to when we make a decision on the.
March 1, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. I don't think we need to bring them in front of us
Yeah.
for some sort of interview. That just, it
I have
just
to
doesn't
tell you,
seem
my
like it would bode
experience
well.
with volunteers is like, at least on the zoning board of appeals, we were always desperate to get people come on. So when they did appear before us, it was like, well, you got a pulse and you're warm.
You're in.
But no, we want to be a little more selective than that. So the application gives you all the background that you need.
Yeah, okay.
I do have two comments, and one is, after that deadline, you could still accept applications and have them on an alternate list,
Yeah.
because, as Don said, people move. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
statistically, a quarter of the country moves every year. So there are things that happen, life events that overrun people, and it would be good to have them in reserve. The other comment is, the more people you have, the higher your quorum is.
Correct.
So you do need to pay attention to that
Yep.
and bear that in mind, because tonight you just made it.
And the more people you have, the more unwieldy it becomes too, and more difficult, and it's harder for people to participate. And so I mean, you could look and see what other towns do. We could take a look at that. But, in my experience, I would say you certainly would never want to go more than, 12 or 15.
If memory serves me, when the select board was first talking about forming this committee, I believe what they were saying was the number they were looking for was between 9 and 11.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
What are we now?
you were 10. You had 11, and one had to leave before you
Yeah.
met for.
I've seen them as high as 15, but, 10 to 15, sure.
Yeah, I would say the addition of 2 more, if they still wish to join,
Sure.
would be fair enough.
And the
so
application's
you'll-
right on the website.
Okay, so they don't have to contact her. You just let them know where the application is, then you'll goes to you?
Here's your
Yep.
first one.
Okay, cool.
got one.
There you go. That's one.
Yep. All right. So I can reach out to Jackie and let her know that if the person that she knows is still interested, that she needs to fill out a form. We'll move forward from there. Well, we are just cruising right along.
Note the speed with which we get through the agenda with this streamlined crew here tonight.
So next is budget discussion.
yes.
Yes. So I guess my thoughts on this are, and again, since this is such a complete proposal here, there was a list of prices that other towns had paid, or what their cost was, and you had verified that was sort of verified on another account. These ranged from, it was 14,000, that was for an open space plan, all the way up to 70,000 for a Wyndham's comp plan. We also have been sort of told that the price could range between 60 and 90,000. So I think we're sort of getting an idea of roughly what this might cost us. I think maybe going somewhere in the middle or in between that 60 to 90 would be a good idea. And then also keep in mind that that's a placeholder. We need to submit this by the end of the month, but if we find that we're way off base, over or under, that is something that we can alter.
Well-
So I'd like to open up discussion for that.
We know what the price is, and I had suggested doing it cost blind when we thought we were going to have multiple candidates, so we'd pick based on qualifications and presentation and approach, but we're not going to do that now. So we know the number, or Sue knows the number.
Sue knows the number. I would still endorse that. I'd like to go forward with that as a plan through the interview, and that we really do not know the price to the whole committee until we do the interview. I had a couple of observations, and that information was helpful in there. I was surprised to see it as well. But just a couple of caveats. So the Gray comprehensive plan was done in 2020. So there's been a little bit of an inflationary factor from 2020, so we got to take that into consideration. And I believe it listed the total cost is $59,000, but GP Cog did the inventory portion of that plan. And as I look at overall, when they break out the number of hours that a planner does, the largest amount of hours, even in North Stars,
Is it the inventory?
is the inventory. So once again, that needs to be taken into consideration of that 59,000. They had GP Cog's assistants doing one of the major components. In Lisbon, they did the comprehensive plan in 2019, so that's the inflation factor there even more so, I guess. Total project was 19,000, and as I said, that was an update to an existing plan. And I've come to learn that there's a difference, and it may not be big and it may not be small, depending on when your last update was. But that was $19,000 for Lisbon for an update. And that was only 9 months that they were contracted for to do that. And then in the Wyndham comprehensive plan was 2017. That's an even bigger inflationary factor. And that project cost $70,000 and was for 18 months, which is, I believe, what this proposal from North Star is, 18 months. So I think that those all have to be taken into consideration when we're looking at establishing a range. I guess I'd also say that it's, if I was to take the Gray 2020 project and add the inflationary factor for the last 2 years anyway, and add the inventory component that GP Cog did for them, and I don't know if they did it for nothing or if they were, no, so there was probably.
There were hours in there.
Yeah. I projected that with inflation in the inventory component, that was about $81,000 in cost.
In $23, $22, today's dollars, or
in
in
$2020.
$20?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what that came out to was, and I don't know if this is another way to look at this, Don, you'd know better, but I kind of was breaking things down, kind of going the way the plans were submitted, which is an hourly rate. So for that projected $81,000 in today's dollars for the Gray plan, which was a full plan, adding in the inventory component, it come out to about $82 an hour. What I did is I just kind of, and I just based this on more or less experience than anything else, because my wife says I'm so out of touch with things, how things cost. And whenever she says, well, we got to get a new stove, and I'm going back, well, this stove we bought in 1990, so there's got to be a couple $100 more. And she just laughs. But anyway, so if you break it down in the hourly component, for me to kind of get grounded. I pay $80 an hour for my mechanic, my auto mechanic. So, I mean, I don't know what other people's experiences are. So I just take that into consideration when we're discussing a range of what this would cost.
So I think the thing to do, if you don't want to look at the proposal, and that's fine. I mean, what you do is maybe take some, extrapolation, like you're saying, factor it for, inflation, factor it for what you think the work might be, put in a placeholder with the budget in time, and then when you go through the process and do open the proposal, see what it is, then you adjust that up or down,
I think that's a great.
and you're done. So just come up with a number, and the number I'm hearing, I'm just going to pull this out of the hat, is, you can break it over 2 years, because you're going to have funding over 2 years.
Right.
Maybe you put 50,000 in.
Yep.
With your 10 and see where you go.
Yep. Just as adding the numbers up from the data that North Star provided us, it was 981 hours. So at $50 an hour, that's 50,000, and at $100 an hour, that's 100,000.
So if you put 50 plus your 10, you got 60, so I think you're good for the first year, hopefully. And there is, like I said, there's a substantial amount of this that we can do if we want to do it. We did it last time, and on the inventory and analysis, maybe we can get students to do it for credit. That's what I think she's looking at, right?
We don't, until we have a task, there isn't anything that
right.
can tell us.
But I think the idea would be that it would be something that these students would do and get college credit. And then, I guess we're also working with the high school, but I don't know if this is within the capability. It probably is. This isn't going to be rocket science, but it has to be done precisely. So that may be another option. I've been talking to Lorraine Glozak about, getting some assistance from high school students with the videographer thing. She's going the same route with the idea that, they would get some level of pay and then, credit. But so there are different ways. I mean, like I said, GPCOG is not using their top staff to do this. They're using probably AmeriCorps people is what they do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think what we would need to do is put a motion to approve a certain amount, correct?
A range?
Or a range or a,
For fiscal '23, July 1, '23 through June 30, '24, which would be the first.
What you'd have would be
year
what you'd
count.
have would be whatever you put in this upcoming budget plus the 10 you haven't spent.
Yeah.
Now, just a point of clarification, Don, and in the discussion, but just to be clear, the 10,000 doesn't automatically carry over.
No, but I believe it will carry
Yeah.
over if you ask them to carry it over. You have to specifically request it, and
Yep.
there has to be a reason.
I think we
Yep.
can justify that with the little things that we'd like to get started with, such as logo work, video work. I think that's
You can
something
start on
we
that
can
right
say.
now, but what he's talking about is at the end of the fiscal year, whether it would lapse to surplus or carry over. So at the end of the fiscal year, you will have probably expended some on your logo and other things you're doing between now and June 30th. But if you don't request it to be carried over, it won't be.
Right.
And I think if you do, they will.
Yep.
But if we have the 10K, but we wouldn't be able to get at new consultant money until July 1, is that correct?
Yep.
So
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
we're gonna get to July 1 on 10K,
That's right.
is the
Right.
spend schedule, right?
So I think.
Yeah, or the other option there, that would be the desired option. But I mean, if it was a compelling reason and, that we needed more money, you can always ask the selectmen to give you something from contingency. So there
There are options there.
are options, so we have 75,000 annual appropriation for unforeseen expenditures. You probably could make a case for that here. So I don't think you're going to get caught without funds, but you're right. What you're saying is right.
I like Don's suggestion, which is basically we can based on our spending right now, which has been zero. We could probably go with a request or a placeholder now of 50,000 for the first year of the consultant, and then a carryover of whatever funds are left of the 10,000 for operating. So I guess the proposal would be 60,000 for the budget.
And you might be disappointed when you open the envelope, or you might be pleasantly, surprised.
Sure.
And you can always make an adjustment later, but what we need for the 30th of this month is a number.
Yep.
You can always,
Yeah.
and then we have the whole fun of the going over it, the
Sure.
budget, and that takes weeks. months.
But, the fund isn't exclusive, because, as suggested, once that envelope is opened and we've set a number, then Dawn might have to have some fun based on the selectmen's direction.
Yeah.
So everybody's got to do a little bit of their part, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, I'm just looking at I'm just pulling it out of the hat, looking at what other towns
Sure.
are doing, so I don't know.
Sure.
I could be way off.
I mean, we could make it easier and ask to know the number tonight. Bottom line being that if we're way off the mark, what it's going to mean that we're going to go and do one or two things. We're either going to say, well, we got to repost the RFP to see if we can get someone who's more in the range that we agree with, or we go with the flexibility of saying if what we're talking about is an additional $10,000, then going and making our case to the select board as far as flexibility.
Yeah. Everybody's got an opinion. Chris had an opinion. What's your opinion?
You put me
Overall
on the
project.
spot.
Put you on the spot. You know? I was a little lower than him, but go ahead.
I think the number that Peter came up with is exactly the number that I had. And that was just a rough guess with what I've heard other towns paying. You're pretty close to in tune. Am I saying what you thought I'd say? Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Well,
I think we're in the right ballpark. If you want my opinion, I think it's good to interview without knowing the number.
Yeah, I think that's
I
good.
agree that, you don't pick on the number. You want to pick on, is this a good partnership?
Right.
This is a guy that's going to be working with us for 2, maybe longer years. And I think the 10,000, we're only going to be, really, if you don't pick a planner until March or late February, you got March, April, and May, and June. So you get 4 months of this guy working. 10 grand should cover that, because they're going to be billing after 30 days, like most companies do. So you only get a couple of months. So we should be okay with the 10. If you put in a placeholder of 40 or 50,
Yeah.
I think you're going to be safe for the next fiscal year. And then once you know the number, you can adjust it.
Yeah.
But it's appropriate to put in a number like what you guys are talking.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's the right ballpark.
And the other thing you can do
Also-
too, which we haven't talked about, I mean, this is Raymond, you can look at the scope of work, you can look at the number, and you can say, you can negotiate over the scope of work and adjust the number that way if you need to. And I don't know as that's going to be necessary, but you can do that. We've done that before. We did that with the last one. We did it with the in Atlantic, Pat Murphy's survey we did in town, So there's things you can do.
And I think that companies like this, they're going to adjust to our needs.
Right.
And if they say, look, you don't have enough money, they're going to say, well, you guys are going to have to do this X number of
Right.
hours worth of work.
Absolutely.
And, it's like any other negotiation with a contractor. They're just contractors, and we negotiate. And the first part is, are they going to be a fit? So you pick them on the fit, and then you sit down and say, let's make the numbers work.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
How it works.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
I would
In
also-
private and municipal government.
Right. I would also assume they're accustomed to working with municipalities, so they understand how we raise money. So
And the budget,
this
yeah, and the
is
budget
something that
cycle.
that they're gonna understand as a budget cycle.
Right.
After listening to discussion, I've written a motion, but I don't know if it's accurate. Could I read it out?
Please.
Motion to request $50,000 be added to the fiscal year 2023-2024 budget and to carry forward to fiscal year 2023-2024, the balance left, if any, at the end of fiscal year 2022-2023 of the $10,000 already allocated for the comprehensive plan update.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds
That's the
good.
two birds, one stone approach. It's all done. Sounds good. So they're on notice that that's what you want at the end of the fiscal year, to carry forward, in addition to the appropriation.
That way you don't have to think about it.
You don't have to
between
think
now
about it.
and
You've
June.
already told them.
So I would make a motion what she said.
Yeah, I think that worked very well.
Okay.
And I'll second it.
There's a
And
second.
there's
you
a
go.
second. Any discussion? I think this is a great plan, number one, because we are just barely a quorum tonight. So this sort of sets our place. I like the fact that we are not going to find out the price tonight, because then again, we're deciding as the six of us that, then that's okay, basically. So I like this plan. I'm in favor of it. Any other discussion? Then let's vote.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Unanimous.
That was painless.
Okay, next up is our next meeting date. I had it down as February 1st, because that would be the
First Wednesday.
first Wednesday of the month, so I'm hoping that still works for everyone, and that it's available.
It
We
is.
can slide right
I have,
to our
I
normal
have
schedule.
slid you right in.
Okay.
I believe I scheduled them out for the year.
Okay. So our next meeting date then would be February 1st. And then again, just to reiterate, we are going to try and invite North Star Planning to our next meeting. I will now open it up for public comment, but I don't think I see.
There
public.
appears to be no public.
Okay, so I'm going to close public comment and move on to committee comment. Are there any comments by the committee? Peter?
I got to make a comment. So, first of all, I thought that went very well. I was anticipating a little bit more of an arduous budget discussion, but that worked just fine for me. So, a couple of things. First of all, just to acknowledge, John Rand forwarded to me, and I forwarded to Don, a state program where there are monies available. I believe some of it has to do with grant writing and the like. But definitely, I appreciate that, and I would encourage everybody on the committee. When you're coming across those sort of things, if you want, you can get them out to people, you can get them to your co-chairs, and we'll get them to municipal people. But it's something we should be looking at. We seem to be in an era right now. I don't know how long it'll last, where there seems to be a little bit more governmental money flowing through grants and other mechanisms. And so I believe that that's something that we need to keep our eyes and ears open for, anything that can assist us going forward with this committee's work and for the town in general. Secondly, my comment is this: if you haven't had the opportunities, or you don't generally tune into the community station and watch the different boards meet, which, like I say, not everybody in my household thinks they're fascinating TV, but I enjoy them, and they definitely give me information. I would tell you that at both the select board recently and the planning board, what has come up? The comprehensive plan. So if you haven't heard it, we are being talked about at that level. And that to me is gratifying, and it also kind of reinforces that idea that updates to those other committees is only going to make our position stronger with them, keeping them informed in what we're doing. And likewise, if we're going to be working with any committee, I would think closely, well, I would say that probably we'll be working to some extent with budget finance, with select board, but definitely with the planning board. So at the select board, our name came up in the discussion recently of short-term rentals. So something to keep on the horizon, because that's something that, although that I think that the select board's decision in that discussion was basically, well, we're going to wait and see what the state says. I can tell you the state is already saying things, and so keeping apprised of that, and certainly watching what the select board is talking about as far as that is going to help us. Not only that, but obviously, great question, possibly for a potential contract planner, and how do they envision communities handling that? And then on the planning board recently, and I got schooled in this, I usually stay pretty much on top of legislative actions, but if you haven't heard of LD 2003, which was a recommendation signed by the governor last June, what it, and probably people in real estate are a little bit more tuned into this than the rest. And it seemed like it was only recently being discussed by the planning board. And understand, we do have a planning board member on this committee, which is going to be a great conduit for us. When we talk about the diversity of this committee, we have a number of people that are familiar with a number of aspects, whether it be real estate or town government or land use. So anyway, I'd tell you to look into LD 2003. Basically, it was a commission that was led by the former Speaker of the House, I think who just termed out. And it was dealing with affordable housing, among other issues. And one of them that really piqued my attention was, and I kind of was involved with this a little bit going through the Zoning Board of Appeals. And we've had in this town, our ordinances kind of went from mother-in-law apartments, as it was erroneously called, to in-law apartments, because it wasn't just the mother-in-law. But what was suggested in that ordinance was, by the term, was that you could put within the guidelines of the ordinance certain square footage in your home, but it kind of suggested they had to be a blood relative. So that went on for a while, and then I believe legally it kind of was just, we can't do that. And number one, how do we police that? We're going to ask for people's birth certificates, take blood, do genetics and all that stuff. So then it went to, from in-law apartments to accessory apartments. And I believe that's the state that we're in right now as far as our ordinances. Well, this LD 2003 now has it as accessory accessory dwelling units, UAD. UAD. What that says, and this is statewide, and it goes into effect July 1st of this year, is that you can have a quote-unquote accessory apartment within your structure if you have a legally permitted home on a lot. Or you can have an attached, which I believe we kind of also have allowed. I'm not sure if we allow that, but within a certain square footage, right? You could attach it. But what makes this something that the state has determined is going to increase the availability of low-income or affordable housing, terms keep changing, is that you can have a separate freestanding unit on your lot. So as an example, I'm on an 18-acre lot, but I only have the road frontage for one house. Now, I have the option of going to a back lot if I build the road according to town specifications and everything else, and they'll allow you, if you've got the acreage for the zone, but you don't have the road frontage, you kind of...
Back lot subdivision, yeah.
You construct your own road, more or less to town specs. I actually did that for my daughter. Deeded her 2 acres, built a road, and now she has a house directly behind ours and did it that way. However, what this is saying is on her 2-acre lot, as I understand it, she can build a freestanding structure on that lot. And the standard has been in this town, I believe, always is 1 primary residence per lot. But what this legislation is going to do is it's going to allow for a second independent structure on that lot. Not only that, it can't be assessed as contributing to the density ordinances we have in the town. And the town can't say, well, you can't build that unless you have space for another 1 or 2 cars. So the state is basically, in my opinion, is doing things that a comprehensive plan they've been pushing in some areas, comprehensive plans to establish for a long time, for communities to build or to permit more structures.
Higher density.
Higher densities. And so I don't know where I stand on this right now, to be honest with you. But to me, and I believe the discussion at the planning board last week or the week before was that they had some major concerns about that as far as, well, you know, and also I would just tell you that there's also an op-ed in the Sunday Telegram 2 days ago, in housing, central planning is no substitute for local control. And that just gives you a little bit of how some people are going to view the fact that the state is infringing on municipalities as far as their zoning ordinances are concerned. And I guess all I'm doing is alerting this committee to the fact that this is going to generate some amount of heat over the next several months or years. And it will behoove us all to be knowledgeable about it. And I'd say certainly following the planning board going forward in their discussions of it. So that's all of my public comment.
Well, I'm going to add a little bit to that.
Yeah, good.
That the town has had conversations with the town attorney about this since that was passed. There is still rulemaking that needs to go through the process at this stage. Some of the things you brought up were the accessory dwelling. We have 700 square feet. So we already have something to allow accessory dwellings. We also have in our ordinance that you can only have one principal dwelling per lot.
Right.
So this, if it passed the way it's proposed, would violate our home rule authority. So there's some constitutionality about that. There's a lot of things that I would say stay tuned. I think the other thing is Raymond is comprised of 65 miles of shoreline zoning around our lakes and ponds and rivers, and it won't apply to those areas as it's written. It would apply to the village residential, rural residential, and the rural district. So we have 3 districts that it would affect, but not around the lakes. Because the state requires that you have double frontage, double acreage to have a second dwelling, and you have to split the lot out because of our home rule. So there's a
Are there
lot to
lots,
this.
Chris, though, that exist on the lakes that have that space?
Say that?
Are there lots on the lake that are big enough
Yes.
that can do that?
They can have 2 principal dwellings on a lot. If they have 450 feet of frontage, and they'd need, if depending on which zone they're in, if they're in the Cape, they would need 6 acres to have 2 dwellings. In LLR2, you need 2 acres. So you'd need 4 acres plus the 225 double frontage on the lake and the road. So there's a lot of things that go into that. So I'd say stay tuned. It's very, it's a moving target. And I don't know where it'll end up, but our town attorneys are on it, and we will keep you apprised. Anything I hear, I will pass on to the committee as we go through it. But I think you're right. I think what happened is a lot of the towns that don't have the accessory dwelling language in their ordinance, it's very tough for people to have, they want to have family stay at home, and they don't want to put them in a home. So it's kind of like the mother-in-law or a father-in-law or family living at home in an accessory dwelling, whether it's a garage or whether it's a standalone building or attached, it doesn't matter. Now, there's another thing that I will describe to you. It's called an in-law. You can have an in-law in your home if it's still open to both parties.
Right.
So if you live upstairs and grandma lives downstairs and it's all open, it's not something that's divided by a demising wall and a fire-rated door that you can't rent out, you can still have 2 kitchens and 2 living areas. But if you're going to have something that you rent out to the public, that's an accessory dwelling. And yes, that's affordable housing. That's the only way some people can afford to live in Raymond right now. We used to allow it in the shoreline zone until the state in 2017 changed the ordinance to require double the acreage and double the frontage. Because it's more intensive use on the lakes, and they don't want that. It's kind of like they address that, but they don't address the Airbnb. So those are 2 really key things that we're gonna, as a committee, wrestle with in the next couple of years, is growth on the lakes, and how we look at rentals on the lakes, and how we look at accessory dwellings. There's a lot of this that is part of that Growth Management Act that comprehensive plans originated out of.
How tangled do we get in that, knowing that the P-Board and the state and you, Chris, will be at the forefront of these deliberations on how this new LD 2003 goes. I mean, I'm just thinking, how much time do we, in the comp plan, need to,
Well, like
we
you
need to
said-
be apprised of it. I think your point's good, Peter. that
It is.
we-
And I would also say, John, that the planner is going to be as well apprised as I will be.
Anybody, yeah.
And anybody. So they're right in the thick of that as well.
Great question for the planner.
When you get to those topics, by the way, you may have some people at your meeting,
Uh-huh.
Yes,
both sides.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. The tone of this obviously was very much, this is a home rule state, and this is anti-home rule.
It is.
And so, and I would expect you'd find not a few people in this community that are going to feel that way as well. So as we deliberate and discuss policy and recommendations, I would expect that exactly, Chris, that we're going to hear from those people.
We have a lot of citizens that are already coming in complaining, why can't I have another structure on my property? All I want to do is keep grandma or grandpa home, and why can't I?
The other side of the coin is I look at this LD is that it's we know, I know as a fact, and I believe probably this committee is knowledgeable enough to know it, that there is a history of some communities using zoning to keep undesirables out, to formulate, going back to the good old days of the red line, and who's allowed to live where. And, whereas maybe legally or constitutionally you can't say, you can't come into my community, what you can do is you can write ordinances such that they can't come into your community. So, I mean, there's those exist as well. So like, I haven't made up my mind yet one way or another on this. I need more information. Were this to pass, though, in its present form, one of my questions would be, and I think it was discussed at the planning board the other evening, was, so if you happen to have those double or triple lots on the lake, and you have your, $10 million home, and you decide you're going to build another freestanding home on the lake that isn't going to contribute to anything regulatory like density zoning, or does not prohibit you from putting that structure in place by saying, well, you also need space for 2 automobiles. I can't see where those are going to be affordable houses.
They're not using it for the affordability, they're using it to rent it out.
Yeah, so I guess I got questions about that. How does that factor into it?
That's why I say stay tuned.
Yeah.
All right.
Any further public, any further committee comment? I will just quickly say thank you, John, for forwarding those along. I did already watch the first bipartisan infrastructure law webinar.
Good.
Yeah.
And only comment there, I mean, those things, they churn along at pace too, and the deadlines for getting a proposal in, boom, 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 and they've already funded 2 of them, I think, and some of the coastal towns have chased it and been awarded and been highlighted in some of the follow-up emails. So that might be just something for our planner, whoever it might end up being, could assist us with flagging the ones that look like they could fit for Raymond as they come along.
Yeah.
And help with it.
All right, any other comment? I'm not seeing any. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved in a second.
Second?
All right, we are adjourned.
Nice.